GNT Show is intended for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. These are the voyages of the GNT Show. Our continuing mission to explore Star Trek storytelling, to seek out new worlds and interesting characters, to Bowega, where no show has gone before. Live long and prosper, bitches.
Good evening, everyone. It's Terry Lynn from the G&T Show. Welcome to our newest supplemental log. Today, featuring our very special guest, John Jackson Miller. Say hello.
Hey, how's it going?
And, of course, joining me today is our one and only Ceridium.
Kapla!
Oh, it's so great to have you back on the show. For our listeners who may not know very much about who John Jackson Miller is, then you haven't either been listening to the show and how I've raved about his Titan novels, and shame on you. But John Jackson Miller also is more than a Star Trek novelist. He's a Star Wars novelist. He's also a comic book writer, from what I could tell. Is it comic books too?
Yeah,
Look at this. Holy crap. Yeah, look at this. Star Wars, Halo, you name it. You are a genre nut, my dear.
Yeah, I've been wallowing in all of this stuff for a very long time. I think my bio says that I strip mine my childhood for a living, so that's pretty much what I've been doing here.
Very cool.
Oh my gosh. If you guys get an opportunity to if you ever want to know what John Jackson Miller is up to, his website is farawaypress.com. So you can head over to his website, and he keeps it pretty up to date as to what he's currently writing, what he's pitching, how he's working. It's an amazing website, especially for a person who, I don't know, just all on your own. It's holy crap, dude. But we're actually here to talk about Star Trek because that's what the GNT tries to focus on. And we want to congratulate you on the forthcoming official birth of your first book of the new trilogy,
Thank
Star
you.
Trek
And
Prey.
that's Prey, Prey. The running joke that we had while I was getting it together was that pray that it's on time. But in fact, not only was it on time, it actually managed to make it out to the to Mission New York before I even expected it to be on available. So.
Which bums me out because I happened to have we were covering Mission New York for the GNT show, and I was there by the Simon & Schuster booth. But to be honest with you, I was there and I was talking to David Mack and actually picking up a couple of his books that I hadn't, and I failed completely to take a look at the rest of the table. And so
I don't know exactly.
Me, but,
I don't know exactly when the books got there because they would have come pretty, almost directly from the printer at that point.
Wow.
I would, if I had known the books were there, I would have been there. But the book is now starting to get out into the wild anyway. One of the things with mass market paperbacks is, on the hardcovers, there's a street date that, the boxes all have stamped on them, do not open by such and such date. But whereas the paperbacks tend to just, land. And yes, the 27th, I believe, is the date that the ebook will become available. But I'm already beginning to see some people that are saying that they've gotten the book at their bookstores.
All right. This is a new trilogy, and please forgive me if I'm wrong, but correct me if I am. This is a trilogy of books that you were kind of solicited to do for the 50th anniversary of Star Trek.
Well, I didn't know whether it would land in the 50th year or not. Yeah. What I had. I had been asked after I wrote Takedown, which was the Next Generation novel that came out in the first part of 2015. Thank you. I had been asked if I wanted to do another novel, and I said, "I'll tell you what, I've got a story, but I think I need 3 books." And it just happened that Margaret Clark had a 3-month slot available here at the end of this year. And again, I didn't know at the start that it would land in the 50th anniversary year. It could well have wound up a few months later, in which case it would have been in the 30th anniversary year for Next Generation. That would have worked too. As it is, this kind of bridges both series, and
I was going to say the crossover. I mean, the timing of the release will kind of cross over with the end of the 50th anniversary for TOS and the beginning of the 30th anniversary for TNG, which kind of makes sense considering the impetus of your stories.
Basically, I had said that what I wanted to do was take a canvas that was fairly large. I needed enough room to be able to tell the kind of story that I wanted to. I wanted to kind of stress test the Federation's alliance with the Klingon Empire. There obviously Star Trek is about exploration and going out and finding things on the frontier. This is not that. This is one of the things, and there's discussion about this fact in the book itself, in the trilogy itself, that this is the price that they sort of have to pay to be able to do those those other things. They've got to make sure that the relationships that they currently have with the people that they've already met remain stable. And what I wanted to do was tell a story that would be sort of a political thriller in sort of the 1960s paranoid Cold War fantasy movie sense. You remember back then we got movies like 7 Days in May and The Manchurian Candidate and things like that.
Oh yeah,
Well, that's sort of where this goes, and it takes off from the moments, not moments, but the days after Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. And we leap forward to the Next Generation, and then we come back to the original series era, and then the entire rest of the series, we pretty much with the mostly with the Next Generation cast. But again, the roots of this conflict that I present go back 100 years. They go back to the beginning, and they go back to the fact that Krug, and of course that's Christopher Lloyd's character in Star Trek III, the "Give me Genesis" guy.
Yes.
The last thing he would have wanted 100 years on was that the Klingon Empire and the Federation would be not only at peace but would be allies. He would have.
Yeah, no kidding.
He would have been horrified by that, and so even though the story went through a couple of iterations as I was developing the plot, the main thing that was always part of it was that there would be this incident or series of incidents that would kind of hit the Next Generation with a Star Trek VI kind of a situation where you've got a series of incidents happening that cause the Klingons strife with the Federation, and naturally instead of the Enterprise crew from the original series being involved with it, now we have the Next Generation Enterprise involved with it, and we get to see how they kind of deal with a similar sort of predicament. One of the differences, though, is since I have the 3 novels, I was able to take that kind of Star Trek VI sort of an incident and really expand it outward. It takes place over 3 months of real time. Or across 3 months of real time, which is exactly what happens in the real life, because it's going to be 3 months reading the books. It'll be September of 2016 for you, but it will be February of 2386 for the people who are in the books.
Interesting. It was funny is that in a strange way, I mean not in a hilarious way, it's to have been a part and to listen to a a panel given by Margaret Clark and Marco Palmieri and some other writers at Mission New York, and Margaret actually mentioning Star Trek Prey, which was coming up, and how she and you both kind of worked through some of the unique challenges that you had to bring Star Trek Prey to press, mainly because of timing and trying to get it right with where the positions of the crews that you were working with were left off in other novels. How challenging was that for you to have to kind of twerk everything out to make it work right?
Well, there's always a bit of air traffic control that's going on with this sort of thing. The good news was that, I had in hand the most recent Titan novel, when I was, working. And so I knew, what Riker's most recent situation was. I had been given a good idea of, where Enterprise would be. And also I had just recently worked with Aventine over in Takedown, so yeah, I had a sense of what was going on over there. And some of the other coordination that was done. I talked with the the authors of the German Prometheus series, which is published, I guess, by Cross Cult, I think is what it is, and their trilogy comes out either it's already out or it's out very close to now, and since they have some Klingon elements in their story, we were able to bounce back and forth some facts, so we were able to knit those two together.
Well, and that's really cool. That's something that I don't think many of our listeners really know, is that you guys have that ability to kind of reach out to your counterparts, even from other publishing houses, as long as they were licensees, correct?
Well, they reached out to me, and it was,
that's awesome.
It was something where it was like, is there anything we can do to help set your books up? Because the books do get certain books do get published over there. I think Takedown just now came out in German, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing seeing that. The bigger challenge was just making sure that all of the different pieces that I had involved in this, connected with not just the TV series and what we had seen, but also the novels that we had in the past, the short stories, and even to a degree the comics. Where I built my own spreadsheet laying out specifically, all right, this is when this particular battle happened, this is when this particular thing happened, and of course,
that's cool.
That all exists online to a degree anyway, but sometimes depending on what resource you're looking at, things change, or things evolve over time as later books come out. And so I did as much diligent work as I could on that, because there's so many Klingons in this, and the Klingon Empire is a big part of it. I had all sorts of resources. I literally brought a library cart into my office and set it by my desk just to handle everything that I had that I was working on. And of course, this includes things like the Bird of Prey Operator's Manual. So I have an entire squadron of birds of prey in this series, and so a lot of the action takes place on board, and everything that I describe should actually be a location that's in those blueprints or in those technical manuals. And then the Klingon language was another thing that I
was going to ask you. How many copies of the Klingon dictionary or the Klingon the multiple
Well, I
books
had
by
the-
Mark Okrand did you have your
I had
nose
the
into?
I had the three main ones, which are the Klingon Way, the Klingon Traveler book, and
Right.
and then just the basic encyclopedia, and of course I also drew quite a bit on the Klingon Art of War that Keith DeCandido had
Right
done. But what I wanted to do though was because there are a number of words that we developed for the book, and there is a particular group of Klingons that we're going to discover a lot more about in this. I went to somebody who does Klingon language work, Felix Malmenbeck, who is, I think, an instructor for one of the language institutes, and I ran a number of the things that I needed or that I had done by him, and miraculously, I think one or two of my words were correct. And then the rest, he said, well, this would be better to do this way or this way or this way, and I really appreciate that. And look, these books are never absolutely perfect. Things will always, the collected audience is like having 5,000, 10,000, 25,000 proofreaders all looking at something, and so
Welcome to the Trek fandom.
But
Although
that's okay, and
I was gonna say, admittedly though, you've got your experience down pat with more than just one IP as well. I'm sure with your experience in Star Wars, you get the same kind of grief.
That.
Yeah.
And the nice thing though is that when there is something that you catch, you can correct it now. Because the ebook version can usually be corrected pretty quickly. And I just got the third printing of Takedown, and all my flubs from the first printing are out. They've been replaced. So
Nice.
hopefully as time goes on, these things will not be in the books to begin with. And I don't I feel confident about this trilogy. I feel that I've done everything I can to make it as good a story as possible, but also Margaret and I certainly work to make the work as reflective as possible of what's come before, and the facts of the characters and the facts of the universe.
Right on.
All right. So just for our listeners, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was going to ask, since we were talking about the Klingon language, a lot of my friends do speak the Klingon, speak the language. So I was wondering, for your book, did you have to come up with or create any new words?
Yes, we did, a number of them, and let's see. I'll actually drop one of the words here now because it comes up very early in the first book, and I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong. I'm telling you now, but we will learn about something called the Makoch Van, and that is an actual a ritual that follows a battle, and we'll find out more about that particular thing. And how it relates to what's happening here. Well, let me just illustrate a little bit about what's happening in the series.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wanted to kind of lead people in with just a baseline of what the almost like the book jacket.
Okay, so
pitch.
we know that Krug, of course, dies in Star Trek 3. We never really know much about his family other than he shoots his girlfriend, which isn't very nice in that movie. We don't really know much more about him. It had, though, been established elsewhere that the House of Krug was a powerful Klingon house. And what I wanted to do was the book actually begins with the battle for control of his house because he leaves no obvious heir. The House of Krug, I determined, is an industrial powerhouse specializing in the manufacture of birds of prey. That works really well because the first we see of that class really extensively is in that movie, and we have a battle that takes place at the beginning of the book. And of course, this is in 2286, so we're a few months after the events of Star Trek 3. And there are winners and there are losers. And we get to see what happens with both groups over the next century. And in fact, it is exactly a century from 2286 to the present day, to the present day, 2386 of Trek Next Generation Fiction. And so the Enterprise and its crew are dispatched by Admiral Riker to help the Klingons, the winning side, commemorate this battle 100 years later, because as it happens, that battlefield, which was once a neutral planet, is now in Federation space 100 years later. And that is where the Makochvan comes in, and that is where quite a lot else comes in following. Let's just say hell breaks loose, and what we end up having is a number of different parallel adventures. We have Picard and Riker both working to try to put out the fire and find out what's going on. We have an investigation that's going on with major players in that, including LaForge and Tuvok from Titan. We have certainly what's going on with the Klingons involved in this, including one particular Klingon who presents himself as Korg's heir. I'm sorry, Krug's heir rather, and his name is Korg. And then we have an entire other through line in all three books. Involving, I guess the character you would say is the major character on the heroic side in this, or on the hero side, and that's Worf. And Worf, we see, is not alone through most of this. We see in the first book of a character that has appeared not very recently in the novels. He appeared in one novel by Michael Jan Friedman in the late 90s, and then he was sort of retired in a short story that came out quite a few years back now, and that is Emperor Kahless, the clone.
It's funny, I just watched that episode the other day.
Well, that is one of my favorite episodes, and that is a character that I brought back. He has a central role in this. This really allows me to call back on basically my favorite stuff. I like Star Trek 3 probably better than a lot of people do. Enough to the point where whenever anybody would say, "Well, the odd ones are worse than the other ones," well, I never thought that. I always liked I always liked 3 plenty. And then of course where Next Generation, which I had been watching from the beginning, where it really sold me was when we got to the Klingon homeworld. And where we had the Sins of the Father episode, where we learn about discommendation and High Council and all of that. And I really wanted, basically at that point, it's those sorts of stories that I wanted this to recall. And of course, it's not just a Klingon trilogy. It is at least half of it involves what's going on with the Federation as well, and some of the other players in the region too, because this is not all happening in a vacuum. But one of the good things about having this much space to sort of spread out and do this is, there are puzzles within puzzles and mysteries within mysteries here, and we start off dealing with a Klingon chess master, but we then begin to realize he's not the only player in the game, and so this gets to be I think pretty fun. I'm able to mix sort of the sorts of Klingon that you see in Krug, and then General Chang, who is of course more cerebral. So I think that if you liked those movies and you liked those episodes, this is targeting you.
Excellent. That's me very happy.
I was going to say there's a lot of Klingon fans who are going to love that.
Yeah. And I have to say, you probably had very little to do with the cover art for your books, but I have to say,
Michael, you read my mind.
these
Like, oh my
books,
God.
all three of them, have some of the most unique covers I have ever seen for Star Trek novels. And so, did you have anything to do with those, or?
I had my input was mainly I wanted Birds of Prey. I wanted Birds of Prey on every cover, and that's what I got. We got Enterprise A and E on book one's cover, and that is accurate. Both of those crews are represented. There is no time travel. This is they're set in different times, so it's sort of a pastiche there. Book two's cover, which has a devil or a demonic figure
Has
there.
this demon-looking thing. What the
That
hey?
is something where people are going to hit a certain moment, and they're going to realize what that is.
I think I know.
So we'll have that. So that yes, that wasn't completely out of the blue either. That was something where Doug Drexler, the artist, had read notes on the book and gave put that together. Third book as well. We have a couple of Klingons on our cover there. One of them is Worf. The other one is our one of our characters that I mentioned from the beginning, and that's one of the characters from that original that original battle there at the very beginning.
Very cool. They're exceptionally beautiful. Doug Drexler has outdone himself, I have to say, and they really started a lot of murmuring, I guess you would say, when the art was released. Boy, that was a couple months ago, I think, when the art was released, and we all kind of went, "What the heck?" I mean, it really is
particularly
intriguing.
Book two's cover is going to suddenly you're suddenly going to go, "Oh
cool.
yeah."
Cool. Right on.
I think Mike and I have suspicions, but we'll keep them.
We'll save that for off the air.
Right.
That is
but
the
we
thing.
will keep those to ourselves.
This trilogy is gonna be very susceptible to spoilers, and I know most of the boards people are very good about hiding them. It's the reviews that scare me because there's I don't know what they're teaching in schools, but probably about one in three people believe that a review is supposed to be a book report.
I understand what you mean. Where they go through and talk about every single thing. Yeah,
and that's what I mean. So it's not to denigrate any of those reviews, but it's it's the stuff you don't see them do. Roger Ebert never did that. Here's the ending of the film. And I have had that happen on occasion. And particularly with Takedown. Takedown. The whole thing was constructed as a mystery where by the third reel of the movie, by the middle third of the TV show, you knew what was going on, but you didn't know before then. And I saw reviews on that one, and I usually avoid them, but they'll put right in the first line, "Here's what this is really about," and I'm like, "Oh my lord!" So,
and I have to say, when I read Takedown, it does take the fun out of it. It really does take the fun out of it. But then again, as a reader, I know very well to kind of avoid spoilers if I can, if it's a book that I know I haven't read yet. I mean, I still haven't even picked up book one of Legacies yet, and I'm still very clueless.
Spoilers are one thing. I never talk politics online. I never talk anything controversial. Yeah. Spoilers I'm pretty adamant about because, and this is in my personal life as well, because there's always somebody who hasn't seen it, and even if it's 50 years old or 100 years old or whatever.
Do you? We have a rule. We have a rule. We when we talk about things on the show, if we're talking about episodes or movies or something like that, I mean, we'll hold off, but then we always have big
that's
spoiler
very good.
alerts
I appreciate
beforehand.
that. I appreciate that. And in fact, and we would that I'm going to be doing, and maybe this is something we can do here too. I can come back at the end and we could do a spoiler version of that.
We would love
great.
that. Yes.
No,
absolutely.
It just always my attitude is sort of like, well, exactly how does somebody else's retelling of this improve the surprise? And,
What a
yeah,
perfect
yeah.
point. What a
I
perfect
mean,
point. It's
so
very true.
I would much
Yeah,
rather see it,
I have to.
and yeah, maybe I won't like the surprise either when I'm watching the movie or something, but at least I'll get to
Mm,
see it presented the way they presented it. So
yeah, you wanna watch a movie the way the director asked you to watch it. You want to read a book the way the author wants you to read it. So I can 100% on board with that. Now, again, it was how long had you been ruminating over this story before you
uh,
kind of pitched it
I
to Margaret and the team?
I had it was in fairly early stages when I proposed it, but I already had what I intended to be the title. I already had what I intended to be the broadest strokes of it. By that point, you're technically not really supposed to do a lot of work on something before you get the contract. Uh, but once I had it, I spent 2 or 3 months, knocking out the first plot, and then there were a number of things that were not going to work, both licensing wise, yeah, involving one of the parties that I had in mind for actually two of the parties that I had in mind. Their roles were not going to work in terms of how they connected with the licensed properties, and so I went back and made some modifications, which took a couple of weeks. And as we went along, I realized, oh gosh, this is much better. This is and basically as I went along, every time had a question mark about which way to go, I always erred on the side of making it more Klingon and making the Klingons an even bigger part of what I was doing. And again, the Federation is not ancillary to this; they're major players. But I determined as it was going along that this was going to be something where uh, people would my hope is that if we only have one Federation Klingon conflict in the next 2-3 years of any scale, this fits that this fits that bill appropriately, and that people will think that it was worth doing. And again, this is not a sort of story where I came into it with the intention just of setting them against each other to start off a shooting war just to have that. No, there are some actual, real, serious questions at the root of the Federation's relationship with the Empire. Some underlying things that I felt needed to be looked at, and some institutions in Klingon life that I wanted to take a strong focus on as well.
Okay, now that sounds like fun because I think that most of us, the one thing I have to appreciate, and as I've grown, and I mean that literally, as I've grown reading more and more of the Star Trek fiction, is this idea. At first, I was very opposed to kind of that idea of exploration of the political relationships between the Federation and any other. Just anything that was political kind of was like, well, that's not Star Trek. And then I began to realize, absolutely, that's Star Trek. That has everything to do with Star Trek. Is this idea of how society like this deal with everybody else around it. Then to become enamored, quite frankly, like you, enamored with the Klingon species, to go, how do they even intermesh?
Yeah.
How does that come to that realization without doing some digging?
And
So I'm really looking forward
only
to this.
100 years has passed since the peace.
Yeah,
That is well within the lifetimes of many of the characters in this book,
Yeah.
Yes.
and many of the characters of the TV series. That 100 years. So this is not that far off. I mean, this is we are actually farther away from World War I at this moment than the Next Generation characters are from Khitomer, from the
Wow.
Khitomer Conference. So not a lot of time has elapsed, and we also have the notion that, yeah, well, just with with the Dominion War, we had the Klingons and the Federation not exactly in perfect step during that time either.
Yeah, that almost broke out into a war as well,
and
or
so
could have.
and so I wanted to, kind of look at this stuff from, both a realpolitik sort of a thing, and certainly the Typhon Pact gives us that opportunity to, look at this sort of a bipolar system, and then you've got these allies over here who might be getting a little shaky on some things,
So fun.
yeah, I mean, I look.
And an admiral who's still trying to deal with the fact that he's thrown into the middle of a bunch of diplomacy.
He's green, but he's perfect for this role because he was an exchange officer.
Yeah, he gets the Klingons.
And so I call back on all of this stuff. And yes, there's going to be. I'm sure there's a show or an episode or a story that I just overlooked at some point, that I could have called back on. But I mean, I even went back. I had to decide whether to count. There was a comic book, a special edition of one of the Paramount comics, where there's a member of the House of Krug, the only other real member we actually see depicted, who tries to go after Genesis just in the comic book. And of course, the comic books are sort of off on a bit of a continuity island in anyway. But I think I ended up, winking at that story at some point in here. It's I did my best to get all that stuff in there. But no, to the central question of the Federation and the Klingons, the Federation are not the Borg. They are going out and they are inviting people to become their friends, to become members of the Federation, to become their allies in the case of the Klingons. But
but it's a matter of
Klingons
perception,
don't belong to the Federation, and also, you can make some decisions that might cause you to, come up against the culture of your other allies. In a bad way. I mean, that happened with they did the Andorian
with the
thing,
Andorians, yes,
with the Andorians dropping out. Well, the Klingons aren't even a member of the Federation, so it's and they are, and we certainly see this in politics both today and over the course of centuries. How much of World War I was the fault of shenanigans that were going on within the houses of power, in the various countries involved, factions within. It's again, we did have a bit of a thing with that with the fall on the Federation side, where there was a Federation president who was acting at cross purposes to what we thought was right. But again, the Klingons. They're not exactly running a perfect democracy over there. So
that's putting it mildly.
And I wanted to, in a sense, and this is probably as far as I want to go on detailing how this is all the way. In a sense, this is a test of the Federation's honor as an ally.
Ooh, interesting. I have to admit that
very cool.
Just hearing your descriptions got me grinning ear to ear. I mean, I'm just loving everything I'm hearing, and I can't wait to pick it up.
I'm really hopeful people are going to like this because, again, once I got into it, there was about a 2-month period last summer where I was afraid to even start. Once the plot was done, because I was like, this is a third of a million words. How am I going to even begin? And then I got into it, and I got further into it, and I got further into it, and I.
All right, how much did you have
nothing.
to cut?
Not a word.
Okay.
No, I
really,
there usually isn't time with me to do a second and third and fourth draft. So, no, I mean, I revise. We certainly do corrections.
Right.
But no.
Yeah.
No,
you didn't
actually,
have to shave?
I was astounded that I stuck the landing on all 3 books.
Nice.
that what I had in mind fit, within that 100,000 to 105,000 word range. And that, in part, that is just from experience of having done other novels. But it also is the fact that, I just the way that I write, I work with a spreadsheet, so I know how many words are in each chapter and how many chapters are fitting in each section. And so as I'm going along, I'm sort of, like a ship captain, in the ocean. I'm tacking a little bit against the wind, and I'm already cutting things out as I'm going along, and then I'm realizing, well, I've got more room for this, and you know what? Titan needs a section. We haven't seen them in a while, so that actually, that was one of the challenges with this, is because there are sections here where I've got 8 or 9 or 10 different through lines.
I was going to ask you, it seems like such a cinematic tale with the different crews and the different species, and just you're dealing with the Federation and the Klingons, and yet within those two you're dealing with so many different characters. Do you find it do you outline your books to the point where, do you outline them in your head?
Well, I outline them in, I think the outline for this was 45 pages. So it was, it was, all right. Every chapter, is going to be at least a sentence in the outline, or a sentence or two or three or four. So, with licensed work, you've got to do a full plot. And frequently you'll go off in a different direction from the plot, and that's okay. But I kind of needed, particularly as we got, the third book was challenging to start, because I had to start bringing this thing into port, and I had a lot of people that were in different locations, and I needed to make sure that everybody's got closure, and that everything connected properly, and that everything starts tying together and tying together and tying together. So it's almost like a tree that is branching in the opposite direction, and all the streams are going together to become a river. Once I actually got to the middle of that book, I mean, that was when Margaret was panicking, is the book going to arrive on time? And I was actually sending her chapters as I was finishing. But I was flying at that point, because all of the payoffs, all the dominoes were falling. And so, frequently, I like one book better than the others. If I'm, writing a series of books, this I don't feel that way about, because I feel it's entirely one volume. It's one work. It is one 300 and some odd thousand word work. And I think the beginning is strong. I think the middle is strong. I think the end is strong. There's a different feeling to each book, because the mix of characters involved in each is different. And we actually have 3 different antagonists. One of which rules the first book. Then we get 2 in the second, and then that one and one more in the second, and then we get a third player in the third one. You mentioned cinematic. I actually think the better way I would express it is, this feels like a season.
Wow.
This feels like
cool.
If you were to have. If you were to take the Klingon Civil War, which ended up being like 3 or 4 episodes of Next Gen, and if you had a Netflix series where you could blow it up, or not Netflix, but a CBS All Access series or something, where you could...
Well played, sir. Well played.
Yeah, if you had something where you could blow it up to 10 episodes, that's this.
Right on.
It has a mini-series kind of a feeling.
That's awesome. Cool. That's really, really awesome. I am very, very much looking forward to reading all 3 books. I've already got them pre-ordered, which you can do now, everybody. You can pre-order all 3 books without hesitation. Your favorite bookseller, whoever they may
and I do want to strongly encourage people to order all 3 books.
Yes.
And particularly if they're getting it from a bookstore. Because... one of the challenges when we do these trilogies, and they're released 1, 2, 3 in a row. We don't do that very often, but one of the challenges always is that particularly the retailer will order a lot of the first one, and then we'll sort of pare back on 2 and 3.
And for those who, and I'm just going to put it out there using Vanguard as the perfect example of this. Vanguard, everybody knows, we went through this when we started reading Vanguard when G&T started. And that is, I believe it's book number 4 is now virtually impossible to find. So do yourself a favor, order all 3 at once, order them now. That way you'll guarantee
I
you get
did
them.
write the books so that if you just pick up book 3, you should be able to figure out what's going on. But clearly, it will benefit you to be there for the first episode.
But why would you want to do that when you could get the amazing art on all 3?
True.
Plus the stuff that's on the inside, and that's what I want to read.
A question about without going into spoilers or detail, because they're all one book or one big story, do you use like cliffhangers or anything?
Oh yes,
from one book to the next. Okay.
Oh yes, and I think Margaret got to the end of the first book and said, "Wow, people are going to, this is really, this is really a setup." I think. I do not read reviews. I will not be reading any. My wife said the first thing on Goodreads has appeared with somebody saying, if you like the way that the Lord of the Rings sort of got you into the next book and the next book, by leaving a number of major issues there. There are a lot of surprises that are built up that hit us in those. And epilogue is not even the term that I used. The moment between Act 1 and Act 2. I actually used for the book all operatic phrasing. So it's not a prologue; it's a prelude. It's
wow.
Yeah, and so the prologue of the second book and the third book is not a prologue; it's an overture. And again, this is Klingon, so it's opera.
Yes, right on.
That's perfect.
Very cool.
And so actually, the epilogues between book 1 and book 2 are not epilogues. I think it's a French term, entr'acte, which is it's the act in between the acts. And the intention was one day I am hoping this book will get the Destiny treatment where it's all in one edition.
Nice.
And certainly it will be the case that everybody reading this after November 27th, they'll never really know that it was, released in, a month apart or a year apart. They're going to know that, it'll be it'll probably be one bundle download or something on some website that you get all 3, by buying it. So I wanted it to feel like it was one book, and that's the way we worked at it.
Right on. I know that anytime I pick up a series, I tend to pick them up and read them all at once. So although I will be pre-ordering all 3 of the books, I'll probably wait until the third one's about to be released before I start. Just because of how I am.
Well, unless you read things in one night, I think you'll be okay if you go ahead and start early. And I do feel that we wrote something here where one of the things they can now do with Kindle is they can actually track where people stop reading books. It's kind of crazy that you can do that, but they actually have that ability. I think we've got a series here that people are not going to be able to put down. And one of the things that I've done is the chapters are all among the shortest chapters I've done. They're all 5 and 6 pages.
Wow.
And I did that with Takedown as well. Where
I love that though. I really did.
It's kind of how modern fiction is going, particularly particular mass market or commercial property fiction, where the odds are that at least half the readers are going to be reading it digitally. And of those digital readers, at least half of those are going to be commuting. They're going to be, stealing a chance to read. They're going to only be able to do 6 pages or 12 pages or 18 pages at a time. And, that's some inside baseball kind of stuff. Nobody told me to do it that way, but I think that's how people watch TV now, and that's how people consume their stories now, in sort of these popcorn sized nuggets. And I want you not to be able to stop with just one. Unless you're going to get fired at work by reading the next chapter. That's
amazing. Oh, I'm so excited. I really am. So before we begin to tie things up, I do want to give you the opportunity to not just talk about Star Trek Prey, although that's really what we wanted to talk to you about tonight, but also to kind of reach out, because a lot of our listeners are, bigger fans. Is there anything else regarding your Star Wars work and your Halo
I actually
work?
have 7 books coming out in the next 4 months, which is which is insane. Now some of them are actually, it might be more than 7. I don't know. It's one of the things is when you've done a lot of comics, you'll get re-releases of your work, so those are going to be in this mix. But as far as fresh prose material, the first one came out today as we're recording this. It's a book called Fractures. Fractures: Extraordinary Tales from the Halo Canon. It is my first Halo prose. It's from Gallery Books, which is a division of Simon & Schuster, which does the Star Trek novels. And this is these are short stories that are set at all sorts of different times in the Halo timeline. We've got a number of familiar names in here. James Swallow has a story in here.
James Swallow, Morgan Lockhart.
From the Star Wars side, we've got novelist Troy Denning and Christy Golden, although Christy also wrote for Star Trek. So these are fun, and I did a story about set in the time of the Forerunner, so the very distant past. And then in actually it's in November now, because I think the date moved. I have a Halo comic story coming out as part of a hardcover that Dark Horse is doing. It's called Halo Tales from Slipspace. And these are all stories that are inspired by and set after Halo 5 or Halo Guardian, the game that just came out last year. So that's much more of a military science fiction story that I wrote that's set there. Different characters, no connection with the other story. But that's Halo twice there. Then I have, and this is also involving some other Star Trek authors as well. Dayton Ward, I think Greg Cox maybe as well is in there. I can't remember everybody who's in it. There's a book that's coming out in January from Titan Books, and that is called Planet of the Apes: Tales from the Forbidden Zone. And
yes.
These are all stories that are inspired by the original 5 movies and the TV show that was on in the 70s. And the reason that they're doing this is because, there's another Planet of the Apes movie coming out, but also Titan is going to be re-releasing for the first time in
Don't tell me.
Yes,
Are
for
they?
the first time in 35 or 40 years, they're re-releasing all of the original adaptations. So you have the original Pierre Boulle, however you pronounce that last name, his Planet of the Apes novel, but then you get the adaptations for the other 4 movies. One of them was Jerry Pernelli. I think there's some big names in that writing that. Yeah, in order to get the Pernelli book, I had to go get a illicit download from some Russian website. That's how long it's been since these books have been available.
Wow.
And I needed it for my story because mine ties into Escape from Planet of the Apes, which is my favorite of those movies. That's where Cornelius and Zira go back to 1972, Los Angeles, and in my story they go Hollywood. So it was a very fun story because they have canonically said that it's in 1972, because you see that on screen, and they show them interacting with Hollywood high society in the movie. I do sort of a backstory that kind of has echoes of movies like The Player, except we have apes. So it's and that was a lighter moment. I wrote that in between two of the Trek books, and I had a blast with that. I mentioned some reprinted books. There's 3 more books coming out. There's a video game comic I did for Dark Horse called Smite. That's coming out in graphic novel. All of my Mass Effect comics that I did the first 3 graphic novels for Dark Horse. Those are coming out in an omnibus edition. That one is in November, and then in March. Marvel has been doing these big doorstop size books, which are collecting my Knights of the Old Republic comics for Star Wars. I wrote that series for almost 60 issues over the course of 6 years, and they are reprinting everything that I did, including stuff that's never been reprinted before. First volume came out last year. The second volume will be in March. It's going to be 400 pages. That's the middle third of the series. And eventually people will be able to get the whole thing. And that actually is kind of how I look at Prey. Prey is my Star Trek equivalent of Knights of the Old Republic, which was this big, long epic. The difference being, with the comic book, you didn't know how long the story was going to go when you started. With Prey, I was actually able to, if I had been told, hey, you have 60 issues to tell the story, it would have been a lot more even. it would have been structured more differently, so that the high points and everything came at the right time, instead of, the way comics are, which is, the big moments happen when the big moments happen, and you don't know from issue to issue whether you have another 3 months or another year. With Prey, knowing that I had a third of a million words right from the start, and here's how the books were going to be divided up, I was able to get the dramatic moments all in the right place, I think. And again, with Prey, as I said, I feel I right now. Maybe I'll feel differently after people read it, but right now I wouldn't change a word.
That's so great. What a wonderful thing. We are so much looking forward to the release of Star Trek Prey. Again, you might see it out in the wild, listeners, right now, but officially it is going to, the first book will be released on Tuesday, the 20th?
27th, yeah.
27th.
And then it's the last Tuesday of the month following that. The Jackal's Trick is book 2, and book 3 is The Hall of Heroes, which...
And again, if you want to see anything that John Jackson Miller is up to, you can head over to his website at farawaypress.com. And where can people follow you on Twitter, my dear? Where can they follow you there?
Twitter, JJM Faraway. And that's because John Jackson Miller wouldn't fit. So it's JJM Faraway, but though awesome. I may sometimes work in the galaxy far, far away, that FF also stands for Final Frontier.
I like it.
In my
right on.
That's awesome. And we will make sure that those links are included in our show notes when you listen to this episode. So if you're listening on our website, they're right below you.
Where can people see you in person? Any convention appearances coming up?
Yes. My next appearance will be at New York Comic Con, second weekend in October. I am going to be doing a panel with a number of other fiction folks on reboots and nostalgia in fiction. That's going to be as part of BookCon, which is the book convention that they've got as part of New York Comic Con. I'll be signing at that. I'll also be signing at the Simon & Schuster booth. I will also be signing at the Random House booth one day as well for Star Wars. And people will be able to find me at the Wordfire Press booth with Kevin Anderson and some of the other authors over there. That's in October. I have a number of signings in Wisconsin in October and November. As well as the books start coming out, and later announcements will be made on my website as they're available.
Awesome. We will definitely have you back after the third one is released so we can talk spoilers. And of course, we will be we'll have all of our spoiler warnings up. So hopefully that will be, if not towards the end of the year, maybe the very first part of next
sounds
year.
terrific.
Awesome. Wonderful. Mike, anything?
I can't say enough how excited I am for this, and I'm going to tell all of the Klingon friends this is the series that they need to pick.
Well, I tell them to judge me kindly, but judge me well, because I've done my best to put forward an honorable attempt here. So, kapla.
Kapla. We appreciate that. I know that Keith R.A. DeCandido's the Gorkon series have been one of the few series that's out that is strictly Klingon. And from the sounds of it, although this is TOS and TNG and so much more, it sounds like you put a lot of effort into the Klingons portions of the book, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and check it out. So thank you.
I did my best.
Awesome.
Much appreciated.
Well, again, thank you, John, for joining us. It was so good to hear from you again, and we're really glad that things are going well for you. And we I look forward to reading more about Admiral Riker. So, thanks.
Sounds good.
For joining us. Awesome. Okay, you guys, end of it for our wonderful conversation with John Jackson Miller, author of Star Trek Prey, as well as a lot of other wonderful things. And you can join us for our next episode live this Sunday, the 25th of September, where we will just pick up with our usual crazy bull. We'll see you then, and until then, live long and prosper.
Kapla!
And
That's
Joe
funny.
Landru.
Music for the GNT show is provided by 5 Year Mission, Enterprise Blues Band, Warp 11, Andrew Allen, and Greth Thor. The GNT show is a BLB production.
Move ahead, walk back to 10. Put a mini skirt on my yo man. Represent the human race. And we make space a happy place. To boldly go where no man's gone before. I think I've sang that line once before, but I'm not too sure. We'll be so happy, can't you see? A zero-G community. Gonna travel to new worlds. Beam on down and meet some green girls. Gonna see what we can see. A fancy free galaxy. To boldly go where no man's gone before. I think I sang that line once before, but I'm not too sure. We'll be so happy, can't you see? A zero-G community. Come and take a tour with me. There'll be no cons or Kobayashi. Gonna travel to the end and make new friends with aliens. To boldly go where no man's gone before. Space happy. I think I sang that line once before, but I'm not too sure. We'll be so happy, can't you see? A zero-G community. To boldly go where no man's gone before. Space happy. I think I sang that line once before, but I'm not too sure. We'll be so happy, can't you see? A zero-G